The stars looked different today. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force ship Defiant and watched the screen show dots moving toward them.
Out big dots.
Lots of them, sir. We're getting clearer readings now, said Lieutenant Lisa Hayes from her station. She looked young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and nervous eyes. The alien fleet is huge, at least 200 ships. Jake nodded but kept his face calm. His crew needed to see strength right now, not fear. He was 42 years old and had been preparing for this day for the last 10 years. Ever since the first alien signals reached Earth, how long until they reach us? He asked. 6 hours, sir. 6 hours. Jake looked around his bridge. These people trusted him. They had families back on Earth, kids who played in parks, parents who worried about the future. All of them were counting on him in thousands. Of others like him, 3 days ago, the message had come. The aliens called themselves the Hegemony Empire. Their message was simple and cold. Surrender now or face the consequences. They gave Earth 24 hours to respond. Most people on Earth had panicked. The news showed riots in some cities. Long lines at stores as people bought food and water. Families hugging each other and crying. But Jake had not panicked. Neither had the other military commanders around the world. They had been ready for this day, Admiral. Zektar stood in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The ship was 3 miles long and carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Around him, his officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. Report. He said to his aide, a young officer named Sub-Commander Velinox. The human fleet is small, Admiral. Maybe 50 ships total. Our sensors show they are using primitive fusion drives and basic energy weapons. This should be over quickly, Zektar smiled. His blue skin had scales that caught the light from the ship's displays. His forearms moved with practiced grace as he adjusted his uniform. He had done this exact same thing 47 times before. 47 different species had faced the might of the Empire. All had surrendered. Have they responded to our ultimatum? He asked. Yes, sir. They said no. Zektar laughed. It was a sound like grinding metal. Of course they did. They always say no at first. So once we destroy a few of their ships, they will beg for mercy. The Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had conquered over 200 worlds. It faced warriors, scientists, and philosophers. None had ever stood against them for long. Humans would be no different. Back on Earth, President Carol Adams sat in the Situation Room deep under the White House. Around the table sat the leaders of every major nation. The Chinese Premier, the Russian President, the European Union Council head, and dozens of others. For the first time in human history, they were all working together. Status report, President Adams said. General Peter Clark, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, stood up. He was a big man with gray hair and steady hands. All defense grids are active. The lunar installations are online. The asteroid belt stations are ready. Every ship we have is in position. What about the civilians? Evacuation of major cities is 70% complete. Emergency shelters are at full capacity. Medical stations are ready. President Adams nodded. She was 54 years old and had led her country through 2 wars and 3 economic crises. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. And our secret weapons? General Clark smiled for the first time in days. Ready and waiting, Madam President? The aliens have no idea what they're walking into. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes watched her sensors as the alien fleet got closer. The ships were huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their technology was clearly advanced. But something felt wrong about their approach. Captain, she said, they're not scanning us very carefully. Jake looked at her readings. She was right. The aliens were doing basic scans, the kind you might do if you were looking at a weak enemy. They were not being careful. They think we're not a threat, he said quietly. Are we, sir? Jake smiled. It was not a nice smile. They're about to find out. On the mining station Delta 7, Commander Rick Davis checked his equipment one more time. The station looked like a simple rock processing facility. It had been built to look that way. But hidden inside were enough weapons to level a city. Teams report, he said into his radio. Weapons team ready. Engineering ready. Communications ready. Rick nodded to himself. He was 36 years old and had volunteered for this mission. He knew he probably would not survive it. But his sacrifice would send a message to the aliens. Humans were not as helpless as they looked. Admiral Zektar watched the tactical display as his ships moved into attack formation. The human fleet was small and spread out. Their ships looked fragile compared to Imperial warships. "This would be easy," said Subcommander Valinix. "Should we offer them one final chance to surrender?" "No," Zektar replied. "They had their chance. Now they will learn what happens when you defy the Empire. Target their mining station. Destroy it. That will show them our power." "Yes, sir." Order went out across the Imperial fleet. Weapon systems powered up. Targeting computers locked onto the small human mining station. In a few minutes, it would be debris floating in space. Jake Morrison felt his heart beating faster as he watched the alien ships move into position. This was it, the moment that would decide the future of humanity. "All ships," he said into his communications system, "prepare for Operation Homecoming. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Around the solar system, hidden." Weapons came online. Ships that looked like cargo haulers revealed their true nature. Installations that seemed to be simple research stations powered up massive guns. The aliens thought they were attacking a weak, primitive species. They were wrong. The battle for Earth was about to begin. The first shot came from the Imperial ship Dawnbreaker. A beam of pure energy, bright as a star, crossed the dark space between the alien fleet and the human mining station. Admiral Zektar watched on his screens as the beam hit its target. "Direct hit," reported Subcommander Valinix. "The mining station should be destroyed." But something was wrong. Instead of breaking apart, the mining station was still there. It was getting brighter. Commander Rick Davis felt the alien weapon hit his station. The whole structure shook, and alarms started going off everywhere. But the station held together. It had been built to take a hit like this. "Damage report," he called out. "Hull breach in Section 7, came the reply, but all systems are still working." Rick smiled. The aliens had just made their first mistake. They thought one shot would destroy his station. Had no idea what humans could build when they put their minds to it. "All right, people," he said. "Time to show them what we're made of. Begin." Operation Surprise. The mining station began to change. Panels slid away to reveal massive guns. Cargo bays opened to show missile launchers. What had looked like a simple rock processing facility was actually a fortress. Admiral Zektar stared at his screens in shock. "What is that thing?" "Sir, it appears the mining station is armed. It's very heavily armed." Before Zektar could respond, the human station opened fire. Dozens of missiles streaked toward his fleet. Energy beams shot out in all directions. The small mining station was fighting back with the power of a battleship. "Evasive action," Zektar shouted all ships. "Evasive action," but it was too late. The human missiles were fast and smart. They changed direction to follow the alien ships as they tried to dodge. 3 Imperial vessels took direct hits. Their shields flared and died. Their hulls cracked open. Air and debris poured out into space. On Earth, President Carol Adams watched the battle on the main screen in the Situation Room. The first phase of their plan was working perfectly. "The mining station is performing better than expected," reported General Peter Clark. 3 enemy ships destroyed, 2 more damaged, and our losses. "None so far. The station is holding." President Adams felt a small moment of hope. Maybe they could actually win this fight. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes was tracking everything. On her sensors, the alien fleet was confused and angry. They were shooting at the mining station with everything they had, but it was still fighting back. "Captain," she said, "the aliens are changing formation. They're bringing up their big ships." Jake Morrison watched the tactical display. The enemy was getting serious now. The small ships had failed, so they were sending in the heavy weapons. "Signal to all units," he said. "Phase 2 begins now." Across the solar system, more surprises began to reveal themselves. What looked like simple cargo ships suddenly dropped their fake hulls and showed massive guns underneath. Spaceports that seemed to be for civilian use opened up to let out squadrons of fighters. Colonel Dami Rodriguez sat in her command bunker deep under the surface of the moon. For 5 years, she had been building weapons into the lunar surface. The aliens had scanned the moon and seen only research stations and mining operations. They had missed the guns. "All lunar batteries," she said into her microphone. "You are cleared to fire." The surface of the moon erupted with light as hundreds of weapons fired at once. Energy beams and missiles shot out toward the alien fleet. The humans had turned their moon into a giant weapon. Admiral Zektar watched in horror as his ships came under attack from multiple directions. The mining station was still shooting at them. Now the human moon was firing too, and more human ships were appearing from behind asteroids where they had been hiding. "How many ships do they have?" he demanded. "Sir, our original count was wrong, very wrong. We're detecting at least 200 human vessels, possibly more. That's impossible. Our intelligence said they were primitive." Sub-Commander Velenex looked at his readings with growing fear. "Sir, I think our intelligence was bad, very bad." The battle was spreading throughout the solar system. Human ships that had been disguised as civilian vessels were revealing their true nature. Freighters became destroyers. Passenger ships became carriers full of fighters. Research stations became weapons platforms. Dr. Sarah Kim worked frantically in her laboratory under Geneva. Around her, teams of scientists monitored every aspect of the battle. They were analyzing alien weapons, studying their ship designs, looking for weaknesses. "I've got something," called out Dr. Mark Johnson from across the room. "Their shields have a frequency gap. If we adjust our weapons to match, we can punch right through." "Send it to all ships immediately," Sarah ordered. Within minutes, human weapons were being recalibrated across the fleet. The next wave of attacks hit the alien ships much harder. Commander Rick Davis watched his screens as more Imperial ships exploded under the combined human assault. His mining station had taken a lot of damage, but it was still fighting. Sir called his communications officer. "We're getting a message from the alien fleet. They want to talk." Rick laughed. "Tell them we're busy right now. Maybe later."
Admiral
Zektar could not believe what was happening. His fleet was being torn apart by what should have been an easy target. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were burning in space. "Admiral," said Valenex, "we're taking heavy casualties. Maybe we should pull back and regroup." "No," Zektar snarled. "We are the hegemony empire. We do not retreat from primitives." Even as he said it, he knew something had gone terribly wrong. The humans were not primitives. They were warriors, and they had been ready for this fight. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Jake Morrison watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The plan was working. The aliens had expected to find helpless prey. Instead, they had found a trap. "Signal from Earth Command," reported Lisa Hayes. "They want to know if we're ready for Phase 3. Jake looked at the tactical display. The alien fleet was hurt, but not beaten. It was time to show them what humans could really do. "Tell them yes," he said. "We're ready." The real fight was just beginning. Admiral Zektar stared at his battle screens in growing panic. Half his fleet was gone. Ships that had ruled the stars for centuries were now floating debris. The humans were not just fighting back, they were winning. "Hey, sir," said Sub-Commander Valenex, his voice shaking. "We're receiving reports from across the sector. Human ships are attacking our bases on Kepler 442 and Wolf 359. "What?" Zektar spun around. "That's impossible. Humans don't have faster-than-light travel." "Apparently they do, sir, and they've been using it." The truth was even worse than Zektar could imagine. For the past 10 years, human ships had been secretly visiting every world the Empire controlled. They had been making contact with conquered species. They had been sharing technology. They had been starting rebellions. Captain Ben Parker commanded the human ship Lightning. Strike as it emerged from hyperspace near the Imperial base on Kepler 442. Around him, 50 other human vessels appeared at the same time. They had been hiding in the outer system for weeks, waiting for this moment. "All ships," he broadcast, "remember the plan. Hit their defense platforms first, then their command center. Leave the civilian areas alone. Old and had been flying in space since he was 18, but this was his first real battle. His hands were steady on the controls as he led his squadron toward the enemy base. The Imperial defenders were caught completely off guard. They had been told that humans were primitive and stuck in their own solar system, seeing human warships. Attacking their base was like seeing ghosts. Major Carlos Vega crouched behind a pile of rubble on the surface of Kepler 442. Around him, his team of human soldiers prepared their weapons. They had been on this planet for 3 months, working with the local rebels. Remember, he whispered into his radio, "We're not here to conquer, we're here to liberate." The Zephyrians are our allies now. The Zephyrians were a peaceful species that the Empire had conquered 50 years ago. They looked like tall, thin humans with silver skin and large eyes. For 5 decades, they had lived under Imperial rule. Now they had a chance to be free. Carlos was 28 years old and had volunteered for this dangerous mission. He knew the risks. If the Empire caught him, they would torture him for information about Earth's defenses. But the chance to free an entire world was worth the danger. "All teams, begin the assault," he ordered. Human soldiers and Zephyrian rebels attacked the Imperial garrison from 6 different directions. The Empire's troops had never faced this kind of coordinated assault. They were used to ruling through fear, not fighting determined enemies. Back in the Sol system, the battle was entering a new phase. Admiral Zektar had pulled his remaining ships back to regroup. He thought he was safe at the edge of the system. He was wrong. Dr. Sarah Kim smiled. As she watched the readings from her underground laboratory, the aliens had retreated to exactly where the humans wanted them. "Activate the outer defense grid," she ordered. Throughout the asteroid belt, weapons that had been hidden for years came online. What the aliens thought was empty space was actually full of human military installations. Mining ships became missile platforms, research stations revealed massive guns. Asteroids themselves split open to show weapons inside. "My God," whispered Admiral Zektar as his sensors detected the new threats. "The entire system is a trap." He was right. For 20 years, humans had been preparing for an alien invasion. They had turned their entire solar system into a fortress. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid had been armed and fortified. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes watched her screens as the alien fleet found itself surrounded. "Captain, they're completely trapped. No matter which way they turn, we have weapons pointed at them." Jake Morrison nodded grimly. "Signal to Admiral Zektar. Tell him we want to talk." The communication channel opened, and Zektar's face appeared. On the screen, he looked older than when the battle had started. His scales had lost their shine, and his forearms trembled slightly. "Human captain," he said, "you have fought well, but you cannot win against the entire Empire. Surrender now, and we will show mercy." Jake almost laughed. "You're the one who's surrounded, Admiral. You're the one who should surrender." "Impossible. We are the Hegemony Empire. We rule 200 worlds." "Not anymore," Jake replied. "Your communications." Zektar turned to his communications officer, who was pale with fear. "Sir, we're getting reports from across our territory. Human fleets are attacking our bases everywhere. Conquered worlds are rebelling. Our empire is falling apart." The plan had been perfect in its simplicity. While the Empire sent their main fleet to attack Earth, human forces had struck at every Imperial base simultaneously. Species that had been slaves for generations were rising up with human weapons and human support. Commander Rick Davis, still fighting from his damaged mining station, received a message that made him smile. "All stations, this is Earth Command. Operation Freedom is a complete success. 47 Imperial worlds have been liberated in the past 6 hours. The Empire had made a fatal mistake. They thought humans were like every other species. They had conquered weak, divided, and easy to intimidate. They had no idea that humans had spent decades preparing for this exact scenario." Dr. Alex Thompson emerged from his secret laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains. For 15 years, he had been developing the technology that made this victory possible. Faster than light drives that were better than anything the Empire had. Weapons that could punch through Imperial shields. Communication systems that could coordinate attacks across the galaxy. "Sir," his assistant said, "the President is on the line. She wants a status report." Alex picked up the phone. "Madam President, Operation Homecoming is proceeding perfectly. Empire's fleet is trapped. Their bases are falling, and their conquered worlds are free." President Carol Adams felt tears of relief running down her face. How long before it's over? A few more hours at most? The Empire is finished. Admiral Zektar stared at his tactical display in defeat. His mighty fleet was surrounded and outnumbered. His empire was crumbling. The species he had come to humble had instead destroyed everything he had spent his life building. "Admiral," said Subcommander Valenix quietly, "what are your orders?" Zektar closed his eyes. He had never imagined this day would come. The Empire had seemed so strong, so eternal. But they had underestimated the one thing that made humans different from every other species in the galaxy. Humans never gave up. "Open a channel to the human fleet," he said finally. "Tell them we want to discuss terms." The age of the hegemony empire was over, though the age of humanity had begun. Admiral Zektar watched the human fleet close in around his remaining ships. His once mighty armada was now reduced to 30 vessels, all damaged and running low on power. The humans had over 300 ships surrounding them, and more were arriving every hour. "Sir," said Subcommander Valenix, "the humans are responding to our request for talks." Captain Jake Morrison's face appeared on the main screen. He looked calm and confident, nothing like the primitive warrior Zektar had expected to face. Admiral Jake said, "I'm listening." "Human Captain," Zektar began, trying to keep his voice steady, "you have proven your strength. But think carefully about what you are doing. The Empire has allies. Other species will come to our aid." Jake smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Admiral, you might want to check your communications again." Zektar turned to his communications officer, who looked terrified. "Sir, we're getting reports from the Vorthan Collective, the Crystalline Federation, and the Mechanical Syndicate. They're all declaring independence from the Empire. They say they're joining the humans." The truth hit Zektar like a physical blow. The Empire's allies were not coming to help. They were abandoning the Empire to save themselves. Worse, they were joining the humans. Captain Danny Brooks commanded the human fleet that had just arrived from the Vega system. His ships were carrying refugees from a dozen different species, all fleeing from Imperial rule. The humans had given them shelter, weapons, and hope. "Earth Command, this is Captain Brooks," he reported. "We've successfully evacuated the Altarian colonies. The Empire's garrison surrendered without a fight when they saw our fleet." Danny was 41 years old and had served in the Merchant Marine before the war. He had never expected to be leading refugee ships across the galaxy, but the humans had adapted quickly to their new role as liberators. Lieutenant Nina Foster worked in the communications center deep beneath Geneva. Her job was to coordinate with resistance groups across the galaxy. For months, she had been in contact with rebels on hundreds of worlds, all waiting for this moment. "Status report," she called out to her team. "Kepler 442 is free," came one reply. "The Zephyrians have control of their homeworld. While 359 is secured," came another. "The Aquatic Assembly has declared independence. Proxima Centauri is liberated. The Silicon Collective is requesting human protection." Nina smiled as she marked each world on her star map. The green dots showing free worlds were spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. The red dots showing Imperial control were disappearing. One by one, she was 26 years old and had joined the military specifically to fight for alien freedom. Her parents thought she was crazy. But Nina knew this was the most important work she would ever do. Commander Tyler White stood in the control room of the secret base, hidden inside the asteroid series. Around him, technicians worked at computers that controlled the most powerful weapon humanity had ever built. "Sir," said one of the technicians, "the gravitational field generators are at full power. Can activate the trap at any time." Tyler nodded. The humans had done more than just hide weapons throughout the solar system. They had built a device that could manipulate gravity itself. If the alien fleet tried to escape, they would find that space itself was working against them. "Hold position," he ordered. "Let's see if they're smart enough to surrender first." Tyler was 35 years old and had been working on this project for 8 years. He was one of only 12 people who knew the full extent of humanity's secret weapons. Even President Adams did not know about some of the things they had built. Back on the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Zektar was running out of options. His ships were surrounded, his empire was crumbling, and his allies had abandoned him. But he still had one card to play: prepare the planet destroyer. He ordered quietly. Sub-Commander Velenik stared at him in shock. "Sir, you can't be serious. That weapon is forbidden by galactic law." "The humans have already broken galactic law by attacking the Empire," Zektar snarled. "If I cannot rule this galaxy, then no one will." The planet destroyer was the Empire's most terrible weapon. It could crack a world in half, killing billions of people. Zektar had never used it before, but he was desperate enough to try anything. Dr. Sarah Kim detected the energy buildup from her underground laboratory. Her face went pale as she realized what the aliens were planning. "All stations, red alert," she shouted. "The enemy is charging a planet-killer weapon." The message flashed across the human fleet in seconds. Every captain, every crew member, every soldier knew what it meant. The aliens were going to try to destroy Earth rather than accept defeat. Captain Jake Morrison felt ice in his veins as he read the alert. "How long until they can fire?" 30 minutes, replied Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes. "Maybe less." Jake opened a channel to the entire human fleet. "All ships. This is Admiral Morrison. Back. The enemy is preparing to destroy Earth. We cannot allow this to happen. All units, attack now. Show no mercy." The human fleet moved as one, abandoning their careful formation to charge straight at the alien ships. Every weapon fired at once. Energy beams, missiles, and kinetic rounds filled the space between the two fleets. But Admiral Zektar was ready for this. "All power to the planet destroyer," he ordered. "Ignore the human attack. We only need a few more minutes." Shuddered under the human assault, but its massive armor held. The planet destroyer continued to charge, its energy readings climbing higher and higher. Commander Tyler White watched the battle from his hidden base. The humans were fighting with everything they had, but it might not be enough. The alien weapon was almost ready to fire. "Sir," said his technician, "should we activate the gravity trap?" Tyler hesitated. The gravity weapon was untested. It might work perfectly, or it might destroy everything in the solar system. But if they did nothing, Earth would be destroyed anyway. "Do it," he ordered. Deep in the asteroid belt, machines that had been built in secret over many years came to life. They reached out with invisible hands of gravity, grabbing space itself and twisting it into knots. Admiral Zektar felt his ship lurch as the gravitational field hit them. "What's happening?" he demanded. "Sir, space itself is warping around us. We can't move, we can't turn, can't even aim our weapons." The humans had done the impossible. They had turned the laws of physics into a weapon. The alien fleet was trapped in a web of twisted space-time, unable to move or fight. "Planet destroyer status," Zektar shouted. "It's no use, sir. The gravity field is disrupting our targeting systems. We can't hit anything." Jake Morrison saw the alien ships frozen in space, helpless and defeated. "All ships cease fire," he ordered. "They're finished." The battle for Earth was over. The hegemony empire had fallen, and humanity had won. 3 months after the battle, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Liberator. Through the windows, he could see the construction of humanity's first interstellar command center. Ships from dozens of different species worked together, building something that had never existed before: a truly free galactic government. "Sir," said Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes, "we're receiving surrender documents from the last Imperial holdouts in the Orion sector. That makes it official. The hegemony empire no longer exists." Jake nodded with satisfaction. It had taken 3 months to hunt down every Imperial base and free every conquered world. The galaxy was finally at peace. Former Admiral Zektar sat in a holding cell aboard the human ship Justice. His forearms were chained, and his once-proud uniform was torn and dirty. He stared at the wall, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. A human guard opened his cell door. "The tribunal is ready for you," she said. Zektar was led to a large room where representatives from every species the Empire had conquered sat in judgment. Humans, Zephyrians, aquatic assembly members, Silicon Collective beings, and dozens of others. All the species he had once ruled were now his judges. General Patricia Lewis stood at the podium to read the charges. She was 60 years old and had been chosen to lead the War Crimes Tribunal because of her reputation for fairness. "Zektar, of the former Hegemony Empire," she began, "you are charged with crimes against sentient beings, forced conquest of peaceful worlds, and attempted genocide. How do you plead?" Zektar looked around the room at all the faces staring at him. A year ago, these beings had bowed before him in fear. Now they would decide his fate. "I plead not guilty," he said quietly. "I was following the laws of my people." The Zephyrian representative stood up. Her silver skin gleamed under the lights. As she spoke, "Your laws enslaved my people for 50 years. Your laws destroyed our cities and killed our children. Your laws are evil." Similar voices rose from around the room. Every species had suffered under imperial rule. Every species had lost family and friends to imperial brutality. Commander Steve Johnson watched the proceedings from the observation deck. He was now in charge of integrating former imperial technology into the new galactic fleet. It was amazing how quickly the aliens had adapted to working with humans. "Sir," said his aide, "the Crystalline Federation is requesting permission to join our defense alliance." Steve smiled. The Crystalline Federation had been one of the Empire's strongest allies. Now they wanted human protection. It showed how completely the balance of power had shifted. "Tell them yes," he said. "But they have to agree to our terms. No more conquering other species, no more slavery. Everyone gets to choose their own government." Dr. Alex Thompson emerged from his new laboratory on the space station New Geneva. For months, he had been working with alien scientists to share human technology. The results were incredible. "Status report," he said to his research team. "The Zephyrians have perfected our medical technology," reported Dr. Emily Watson. "It can now cure diseases we've been fighting for centuries. The aquatic assembly has improved our ship designs," added Dr. Robert Chen. "Their new hulls are 50% stronger than anything we've built before, and the Silicon Collective has enhanced our computers," finished Dr. Maria Gonzalez. "Processing speeds are up by 300%. Alex nodded with satisfaction. This was what he had always dreamed of, different species working together, sharing knowledge, making everyone stronger. The Empire had tried to rule through fear and force. Humans had chosen cooperation and friendship. President Carol Adams sat in her office in the new capital city of New Washington, built on the moon. Through her window, she could see ships from across the galaxy coming and going. Earth had become the center of a new kind of empire, one based on freedom instead of conquest. "Madam President," said her secretary, "the Galactic Council is ready. For your speech." Carol walked to the great assembly hall where representatives from over 300 worlds waited to hear her words. A year ago, most of these beings had never heard of humans. They looked to humanity for leadership. "Friends," she began, "we gather today to celebrate not just our victory over tyranny, but the birth of a new age. An age where every species is free to choose its own path. It's an age where strength is measured not by how many worlds you conquer, but by how many worlds you help." The hall erupted in cheers and applause that could be heard from dozens of different species. Some clapped with hands, others with tentacles, some with mechanical appendages. But all were celebrating the same thing: freedom. Captain Ben Parker commanded the exploration ship Pioneer as it headed toward the edge of known space. His mission was to find new species and invite them to join the galactic community. But unlike the Empire's conquest fleets, his ship carried teachers and doctors instead of soldiers. "Captain," said his communications officer, "we're detecting signals from an unknown civilization in the next system." "Any signs of aggression?" Ben asked. "No, sir. They seem peaceful." Agricultural world, low technology level. Ben smiled. Then let's go introduce ourselves. And remember, we're here to help, not to conquer. This was the human way. It proven that strength did not have to mean brutality. That power could be used to protect instead of oppress. Back in the Sol system, construction continued on the monuments to honor those who had died in the war. But more importantly, schools were being built where young beings from across the galaxy could learn together. Hospitals where alien doctors worked alongside human ones. Research centers where different species shared their knowledge. The hegemony. Empire had lasted 3,000 years by keeping species apart, making them fear and hate each other. The human commonwealth would last even longer by bringing species together, helping them understand and trust each other. Admiral Jake Morrison looked out at the stars and smiled. The Empire had sent a fleet to humble Earth, expecting to find another weak species to conquer. Instead, they had awakened something they never expected. They had awakened humanity's greatest. Strength, the ability to turn enemies into friends. To turn conquest into cooperation. To turn an empire of fear into a commonwealth of hope. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what humanity had always intended.